guys, it's Alice, and today I'm going to show you the longest books that I have on my TBR. So I'm quite prone to sort of lean towards books on the shorter side, and I'd say that like 90% of the books that I read are under maybe 400 pages. And I think that big books, they just scare me a little bit because starting one feels like such a commitment. And a lot of the longer books that I have on my shelves are classics as well, and I read them sort of a little bit slower than modern books, so there's also that. I made a video not too long ago about 3 of my favorite long books, which I will link to somewhere, and doing that reminded me that I really should try and read some of these long books that I have, and I'm hoping that maybe by doing this video and having you guys tell me which books you think are great, I might get around to reading some of them. I think we should just get into the books, and I'm gonna start with the classics that I have, and the first one is Middlemarch by George Eliot. This is 923 pages, which is just, oh, it's so long. Honestly, I don't even really know what this book is about. I just want to read it because so many other people seem to love it, and I don't know, I've never been able to fully grasp what the book is about, but I think it follows a bunch of different characters and it has all kinds of different themes, which is very vague, but that's all I know. An interesting thing to note about this, and something that I didn't think about until recently, I spoke to a girl on Instagram about this. She told me about her master thesis and it had something to do with this. But Middlemarch is still published under George Eliot, which is a pseudonym. It was actually a woman who wrote this book, and I can't even remember her name. I think it's like Mary or something. But we published the Brontes books under the Brontes names. Like, it doesn't say, I can't remember Charlotte Bronte's pseudonym. I think it was like Kerr Bell or something. We don't put that on their books anymore, so I wonder why this is still published under George Eliot. Secondly, we have Melmoth the Wanderer by Charles Maturin. This is 707 pages, and this is a gothic novel about this man who I think sells his soul to the devil in return for immortality, and he ends up wandering the earth and preying on people in their darkest moments. And I think this sounds so intriguing, but the size just worries me a little bit. Then we have got The Makioka Sisters by Junichiro Tanasaki. This is a Japanese classic, and it's like 570 pages-ish. And the story is set in Osaka, I think right before the Second World War, and we follow 4 sisters. And that is enough for me to be intrigued. Like, it really sounds like a story that I would like. So I think I would love this if I could just manage to start it. Next, we have got this lovely edition of East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I've read 2 other books by Steinbeck. I've read Of Mice and Men and The Pearl, both of which are very short, but I do like his writing style, and this one sounds really, really good, and I know a lot of people love it. I think it's around 600 pages, and the story is set mostly between the beginning of the 19th century and the end of World War I, and we meet an Irish farmer who lives in America with his wife, and I think the story is just about that. It sounds really intriguing, and it's one of those books that I think I'm going to like, and a lot of people have recommended this to me. Last of the classics, we have 2 short story collections, and the first one is The Fall of the House of Usher and Other Stories by Edgar Allan Poe. I love Edgar Allan Poe, and I used to be obsessed with him in my teens, which tells you a little bit about what kind of a kid I was back then. Either way, this, I think, is the full collection of his short stories and his novellas, and I've read some of them before, so this will be like a mix of a reread and reading new stuff. And I really, really want to get back into reading Edgar Allan Poe because, like I said, I love him, but it's been a while since I've read anything by him. This does kind of feel like the perfect read for fall, but it is also like super big, so maybe I should just start it because I'm not going to be able to finish this very quickly. The second collection of stories is the Persephone book of short stories. This is actually one of the shorter books I'm showing you in this video. I think it's like 470 pages-ish, and it's a collection of stories by I think 30 different authors, and it seems like most, if not all of them, are women. And most of these stories are written between, I think, the 1910s and the 1980s, and I feel like this is going to be a great way to discover some new authors, and I do always love Persephone books. Moving on to something that is not classics, I have got a nonfiction book, and it is Marie Antoinette by Antonia Fraser. This is a biography about, obviously, Marie Antoinette, and this is like 630 pages, and I actually have 4 books by this author, all biographies, and I bought them like a couple of years ago when I was really into reading historical biographies, and then I just never got around to starting any of them. But I really want to get back into reading those types of books because I usually think they are incredibly interesting. Then I have got 3 fiction books at the end here, and the first one is The Gift of Rain by Tom Tuan Eng. This is a book that I've had for years, and it's just over 500 pages, so it's not too bad, but the font is pretty tiny. The story is set, I think, in Malaysia in 1939, and we see 2 people become friends, but then war breaks out, and I think the Japanese invade this place, and they end up on like opposite sides or something like that, and it sounds really, really good. Second to last, we have got a pretty new release, and it is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. My copy of this is like around 500 pages, so again, not too bad. And this is a fantasy novel about a guy who discovers a weird book in his college library, I think. And that leads him on this adventure, and I know that this book has something to do with like an ancient underground library, which sounds very, very cool. I've never read anything by this author, and I really want to, and I have this one, so I really should read it, but I don't know. The size is just a little bit intimidating. At the very end, we have got The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood. This is 637 pages, and Margaret Atwood is one of those authors that I would say is one of my favorite authors, but then I realized I've only read one of her books. I've only read The Handmaid's Tale, and she has so many books out, so I really should try to read some of them. This is one of the ones that I have, obviously, and this is like, I think, a story within a story or something like that, and it starts off after the Second World War, and we meet a woman who has lost her sister, and that's all I really know. I really, really need to read more of Atwood's work. Like, I say that I'm going to do it all the time, and then I never do. I really do just need to read this one, because every time I talk about it, it really makes me want to read it. Okay guys, those are all of the big books that I had to show you today. Please, please let me know if you've read any of these books and if you would recommend them, and maybe what you liked about them so much, because I really need to start some of these. I'm obviously not gonna read all of them all at once because that would be way too much, but yeah, I don't really know which one to go for, so please help me out. I would also love to know if you have a book on your TBR that really intimidates you because of the size and what that book is, and I will see you soon. Bye!